Welcome to the party. I'm not here right now, but I want you to listen very carefully. These guys are very funny, so pay attention. Enough talk. It's showtime.
Hello and welcome to Bags of Action. My name is Steve, my co-host is Pete.
Hello.
This episode we are talking about the 1988 film Action Jackson, starring Carl Weathers, Craig T. Nelson, Vanity, and a whole host of others, including Sharon Stone, who we will come on to. Lots of famous names that I've got
yes.
some fun quizzes and things for this one.
There's some interesting links and So this film, did you know if you know, is written by the same person that wrote Demolition Man.
I did, only because I looked it up, wondering what else he'd done.
You've got the same internet as me.
Weird, that.
Robert Renu.
Who?
Robert Renu.
Oh, right, yes, sorry, yes. I was thinking, I think I'm having a stroke there.
So, no, not today. We've covered a film by the director of this film before on the show, back in the very early days of the show. So it's Craig R. Baxley directed this. He also directed Stone Cold, the Brian Bosworth movie.
Yes.
There's a film called Sudden Fury with a young Neil Patrick Harris that I've seen that he did. Also Dark Angel, and he did a few episodes of the A-Team back in the day.
Wow.
But the biggest name in a way is the producer of this film, who is Joel Silver, who is one of the big action movie names. It feels like he just got all his mates together to make a film. When you start working through the cast list, you're like, there's people that don't have very much time on screen at all.
Yeah.
That you think, oh, okay, it's interesting. And the music is by a very strange combination of people. It's by Herbie Hancock and Michael Kamen.
Ah, right. Odd thing. We should also say that this film came out in 1988, and if you look at what else was coming out around that time, it's quite interesting, which explains some of the overlaps in a way. So the year before this, and it was probably around the same time they were filming, I would guess, within a few months, because I know they don't always make something and then it comes out the next year exactly. So I suspect they may have done more than one film in 86 and then they've come out, a year or two later. But Predator came out in 1987.
Yes, and interestingly, there are 3 Predator cast members in this movie.
You're playing my bingo. Okay, so
sorry.
No, it's fine. I've got quite a few, actually.
Oh, more than 3?
No, there's all sorts of things.
Okay.
So there's Predator bingo with 3 names, if you like to rattle them off.
So Carl Weathers, of course. Bill Duke is his boss in the police. And there's a small crazy role for Sonny Landham as well.
Correct. There is also a Die Hard bingo.
Oh.
So there's a lot of people in this, more than you suspect, actually. So I'll give you one. Robert Davey.
Robert Davey, of course.
He plays Agent Johnson. No, he's the other one.
Yeah, he's an 80s stalwart, that guy.
Correct.
Most of these people are. They're in... When I was watching videos at my nan's house when I shouldn't have been, lots of 18s, these are the people that Bill Duke and Robert Davi were in virtually everything I saw, along with a few other people. But they were in loads of stuff.
Also, the same year as this, we should also say, was Die Hard, was 88. And I'm just doing a quick check, Lethal Weapon was 87.
87. Yeah, 87. Okay.
So, the other ones on the Die Hard bingo was Al Leong.
Of course, yes.
Who was in both this and Die Hard and Lethal Weapon. Yeah. Dennis Hayden, he was in this. He plays in Die Hard. He's the guy in reception who's pretending to be just the guy in the lobby, but he's actually the terrorist as well. Yeah. And the bonus one, I recognized him because it's the same kind of time, is Devereaux White from Die Hard. He played Argyle, the limo driver.
Yeah, okay.
And in this, he plays Action Jackson's kind of driver who picks up his car and peels it off and is like, don't do... Oh, never mind. Yeah, and it goes away. So there's so many overlaps. It's crazy. It's absolutely
and it's
crazy.
interesting. It's a lot of these people that are very locked to that time period.
Yeah.
Then you've got Sharon Stone, whose part in this is relatively small, but she's obviously a breakout star that goes on to be probably the biggest female actress of the 90s, arguably, or one of the biggest. And then you've got Vanity, who sadly is no longer with us, but she was nominated for a Golden Raspberry for this film for the worst actress. So I saw this back in the day. That's what I should just slightly recap. So you haven't seen this before, had you?
Not before today, no.
Okay.
Oh, well, not before very recently.
Yeah. So I saw this on... I hadn't seen Predator at the time, actually. I knew Carl Weathers from the Rocky movies.
Yes.
And in our local video shop, they'd have standee signs. And there was a standee sign of Carl Weathers. I think either back to back with Sharon Stone or back to back with Vanity, I think.
Vanity. Do you want to explain to people who aren't old enough to remember what a standee is?
How rude. They still do them in cinemas, don't they?
Explain what it is. Go on.
Okay, it's a life-size cutout.
Yes, cardboard cutout.
In cardboard, not in cyberspace.
Yep.
It's more like it's kind of the cutout of the poster, but it tends to be the size of a person.
Yeah, they're kind of the lead actors, really. Years
ago, if you asked nicely in your video shop or in your local cinema, they might put one by for you. Although the person in Swansea, UCI, that was supposed to put the Universal Soldier one by for me, forgot. Or possibly sold it.
Not that you're bitter 20 years on.
Well, it would be here. It would be next to me. I would have my life-size Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren in my office.
Gotta let go, Pete.
It wasn't for whoever that is, and I will one day find you, and I will have a very strong word with you.
Yeah. Very loud tut. Anyway.
Yes, indeed. The British way.
Absolutely. So, yes, there's lots of other very big names in here from other overlaps as well, remember. Edo Ross, who is in the first scene and then pretty much not the rest of the film.
Well, he again, we're going to spoil, but he does die, I believe, in the opening scenes.
Correct.
But it's a weird thing. It's almost like, is it Lethal Weapon? We've got the woman jumping out the window at the very start.
Commits suicide.
Yeah. It's a little bit like that. So he's in this place, and it feels like I literally had to stop and check I hadn't accidentally started it partway through.
Right.
Because it's such a cold open, and then the woman with him just gets and she's out of something as well. She's out of Die Hard as well, isn't she?
Correct.
Isn't she the reporter?
No, she's in Lethal Weapon. She's a psychiatrist.
Yes, she is. That's right. And she is shot straight away, which is a running theme with this film. This is one of the most misogynistic films I think I've ever seen. The more I think about it,
there are no good roles for women in this film at all.
In fact, they were competing to who can get the worst role. Of the three, I believe, female parts. So she's shot within seconds.
Yep.
And then Edo Ross is kind of crawling on the ground, and then he's killed. And I remember thinking, well, she's a reasonable name. And I do think it just feels like Joel Silver. I don't know. It's almost like, it feels to me like a film that was made by lots of people on cocaine, and he got his little black book out and just rung all his mates and went, let's make a film.
Yeah, it is.
Because it's Edo Ross. Edo Ross is not a big name. I mean, people listening to the show will probably know who Edo Ross is, but the person on the street wouldn't. But he had a big part in Red Heat.
Correct.
I'm trying to think what else he's been in now.
Universal Soldier, of course.
Yes, Universal Soldier, which I mentioned earlier. So, he's not a bit part actor usually.
No, he's a character actor. He's been if you look at his IMDb page, he's got hundreds of credits. Hundreds. Because he's been in everything. He's in Lethal Weapon too. So, he's kind of guy who's been in so many things you won't realise. He's just a character actor with a very distinctive look.
I'm just trying to think. So did Joel Silver produce Lethal Weapon and Die Hard as well?
I think so.
Yeah.
It's certainly check. But, he, as you say, there's a lot of familiar faces, a lot of overlap. And then there's a couple of weird surprises. Did you notice who one of the uniformed cops was that pops up every now and then as the and I'm using this in quotation marks, comedy relief?
Yeah, they were. No, I didn't recognise those guys.
The young one who's a bit useless, who keeps getting kicked in the bollocks by a prostitute or he gets attacked by someone else, is the actor is Thomas F. Wilson, who then goes on to play Biff Tanner in Back to the Future films.
Of course it is. Now that you say it, yeah, of course it is.
See, the most fun about this film is playing action movie bingo. That shows how much fun I had watching this film and the quality of the rest of the film.
Oh.
Just saying. Well, you've already started, so we'll carry on. There are no good roles for women.
No, that's true.
Yeah. So, Marilyn Trainor's character killed first minute, dead.
Yeah. And then the other two are essentially a window dressing of different types. It's like when they put the Spice Girls together, they're like, what type of look does a different person go for? It's like, right, this very waspy kind of blonde woman, and she's the wife of the main villain, played really well actually by Craig T. Nelson, I must say. And it's very weird. My memory of this film, watching it, was that it was a bit disjointed and I couldn't understand the two female roles, and that was as a teenager.
Right.
And I would have only been about 15, maybe 14, 15.
Okay. And
watching it now, I felt exactly the same. Usually when we watch a film this much later, I either like it a lot more or I like it a lot less. But I almost had exactly the same experience as I had watching it as a teenager, apart from rather than my nan walking in with a cup of tea, my wife was watching with me going, what the hell is this?
What just happened?
What? Why did he just? Why? Anyway, but yeah. So Sharon Stone's character is the wife, and then she does this speech at one point about how he's a much nicer person than you realise. And then I watched the whole film, and it's like, well, he's not. There's no evidence. I don't know how either of you fell for him at all.
At the very start of the film, when it's a way in actually, when Jackson's been forced to go to that dinner, and he stood at the back, and she goes, "You can barely hear him," and he goes, "Yes, that's the point." And she goes, "He's not a lot nicer than you think." And it's that classic reverse of, she's secretly the wife. No, okay. And that was quite good. It worked well as a scene. It was an interesting introduction to her character. It showed that she's got layers to her. And then you get nothing else after that. She's scared, weepy, pathetic. Or the worst part is her death scene. And what they do shortly after her death scene.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about this in the past. There was a certain fashion, I would say, during the 80s of having boob shot for no particular reason other than perhaps it was in the contract.
But they weren't always in the morgue.
No, but there was two that kind of came out of nowhere. Well, four that came out of nowhere, if you like.
Nicely done.
Thank you. One is when Vanity's character, Sydney Ash, just takes her dress off, and you're like, oh, wow, okay, right. Okay, then. There's the one where Sharon Stone comes out the sauna for some reason, and you have her pretty much completely naked, apart from a bit of steam, concealing not a lot. And then the worst one is she's killed by her husband,
who then who then lies on her and starts kissing her.
Well, but the worst thing is that she dies with her husband who's just shot her, kissing her, and she dies naked. She's fully dressed in their house on her bed. Her body is then dumped in Jackson's apartment to make it look like he killed her. Except for some reason she's naked. And I was oh no, they didn't. They did. They did. They put her naked, and I was like, oh no.
But then I think you see her again in the
morgue
when the autopsy, and one of the guys makes a comment about how great a body she's got, and you're just like,
it's really uncomfortable. I mean,
these situations were 10 a penny watching those films, and I think as a 15-year-old I wouldn't have batted an eyelid.
No,
but now I'm just like, what?
The only reason I think they made her naked in his apartment was to suggest that her and Jackson were having some kind of sexual relationship, and then it went sideways, and then he killed her. But even so, it was still really badly done, and it made me really uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's and one of the biggest problems with this film is that the tone is never consistent, and I think it's a real shame, because looking at this again, it's like, so is that Carl Weathers could definitely have been like another Arnie type, because he can do very straight parts, and he can also lean into like the dialogue, the kind of the wittier dialogue.
Yeah.
But where Arnie's films tended to work really well is, yes, you would go from one to the other, But I don't know how they did it. They didn't make it in a way that you believe the stakes. You'd have a little bit of light relief and you're back in the stakes.
Yep.
Here, sometimes you're like, oh, you've just tried to make me laugh when there's something really terrible's just happened. Or you go, oh yeah, he's this hard nut. He's really like, he's Action Jackson. He can do anything. He's this amazing kind of cop. And then he does like superhuman things, like leaping on cars and running. I know he's supposed to be a track and field star before he was a policeman, but running at superhuman speeds or fighting at superhuman speed. And it's just kind of, sometimes I was like, is this like almost a parody of blaxploitation films from like 10 years before? Is this supposed to be a straight out action film that just happens to have a black main character? Or are they not really sure which it is, and they're just trying to? It felt like they just threw the kitchen sink at this movie, including every actor that existed.
I think they were trying to do a action drama with a bit of comedy, similar to other films as we've talked about of the same era. Like, you look at Lethal Weapon; it's quite a dark film, but it has little bits of humour to lift it up. Even Die Hard itself. Pretty dark, lots of brutal murders, and then there's little comedic touches to lift it. They were trying to do that with this, except the script just wasn't there from the beginning. Like you mentioned, the fact that he's a track and field star, and he's, everyone talks about how dangerous he is, and they talked him up, and he's got the nickname Jack Action. And he went to Harvard Law, and I'm like, man, there's so much exposition in this film.
Oh, the amount of exposition at the start. There's the like petty thief that turns up quite a lot.
Yeah,
that's one of the things they did well. The little characters that came back, those things were very funny. Every time I saw him, he fainted. That I actually thought worked really well. But they built it up so much. But they also literally is in the car saying, "You're going to meet Action Jackson. This is who he is. This is what his background." And then every time anyone met somebody, it's the old kind of joke cliche thing of of old like soaps and stuff. Someone, hello, I'm your doctor. I've trained at so and so. I've got so many years of experience, and I'm here to tell you your brother has got this, and this illness.
Yeah,
it just had that kind of. It was so overloaded with exposition that I'm so not used to anymore. I mean, there's some good bits you do find out. You find out he's been busted back from lieutenant to sergeant.
Yeah,
you get to meet Bill Duke. And those scenes are quite good. But yeah, it's weird because there are times when some characters are almost interchangeable. Say the two female characters in particular, it's almost like passing the baton halfway through.
Yeah.
Like, he's rescuing her. Oh, no, hang on. He's now going to rescue her instead. And Vanity, her background, she was in a girl band put together by Prince.
Right.
And before that, she was a model. And she hadn't done that much acting before or during this movie.
Oof, burn.
She is definitely the weak link, I think.
There's a lot of stuff in this film that just kind of, as you say, it's inconsistent. Like, you feel like you're watching different films. It's not really sure what it's doing. The script is really inconsistent. It's really bad use of female characters. They build Jackson up so much that when he finally started doing stuff, I was let down. Because I almost want to see the film before this one. Like the one where they talk out about all these cool things that he did, and he took out this guy's son, and he did this, and he did that, and that's what got him busted down from lieutenant to sergeant. I'm like, can I see that film? Because that one sounds really good. And that's never a good thing.
No, and it's weird. There's a couple of times where some of the fights, because, he's a big man. He's a big, and he could have been, I think, I'll come on to it a bit at the end, but there was a film called Hurricane Smith a couple of years later that he could have carved out a place for himself doing this kind of movie, but just the material I don't think was quite strong enough. It's a real shame. But also, some of the weird, some of the choices about the action scenes are really odd as well. Like you say, it's kind of gritty at times, and like people are shooting up drugs, and you're like, oh, it's all very, and you suddenly start to get into the rhythm of, okay, it's got a bit more serious now. And then, like I said, there's these really quick chase sequences. And I mean, we're going to jump all over the place, but like the end of the film, like, it's built up this dramatic tension, and then he swings on these Christmas lights.
Yes.
And then he drives the car through the house.
Yeah. And
then they've got a sped up kind of fight, which if I like, they're trying to do like a Hong Kong thing, or is it supposed to be? Because he said almost superhuman at times. It is. I remember thinking this was an odd film, but thinking maybe at the time I was too young to understand it.
Right.
But now I think it's just an odd film, and I was teenage me. You should have stuck to your guns. I think you were right. I think it's like, I've read articles recently that have said this is a great unseen film that people missed back in the 80s. But I don't know. I mean, because he was Apollo Creed, because he was so good in Predator.
Yeah.
I just. And he's, even recently he's in The Mandalorian, and even back in like Happy Gilmore in a comedy role. It's like he's a really, really good actor, and he's got the physical presence that not many people have. He should be, he should be one of the Planet Hollywood guys, really. But maybe this was the misstep that
it was a proper dud. It was
not that happening.
It's one of these things where if it had gone well, it may have launched a franchise. You may have got Action Jackson 2, 3, and 4, like you did with Die Hard, which was we talked about this, but it was a proper wing and a prayer for lots of reasons. So many things went wrong, and yet it came out right, and it launched Bruce Willis.
Yeah, well, apparently this was supposed to be a franchise. It was a Lorimer film, which Lorimer, I think, went out of business not long after. Lorimer, which was a bit like Orion, one of the bigger names of films we saw on video back in the day. But they sold the lot. It was filmed onto Sony, and then sold the titles to Warner Brothers, and then it never came back. So another interesting tidbit: the choreographer on this film was Paula Abdul.
Right.
And maybe that's why his career took 2 steps forward and 1 step back.
Well done. Very well done.
Thanks. You're going to head that out, aren't you?
No. Yeah, probably. I've got to say, so at the start, you talk about the kind of superhuman things. There's this death squad with proper mullets.
Yeah.
That seemed to... I kept waiting for an explanation of why they appear to be ninjas who can disappear at the start of the film, and yet there's no explanation given. Like, they burst in through the windows into this office, and then he turns around and he's looking for them, and they're not there. And I'm like, the office isn't that big. How they disappeared? There's 5 of them. How they disappeared, and then they reappear suddenly and disappear. And then later on, they're on the boat and they kill someone else. And then the whole story of why they're doing this, I sort of get it, but also it was so vague and so disjointed that all I know is Peter Delaplane was trying to get rid of these people so that he can do something else.
With his cars that he's making.
Yes.
And it was... I read one review that said they might be supernatural, which makes no sense. But it's also a really weird thing. So you've got someone like Al Young, who is like the one of the best henchmen, a brilliant fighter. He's basically in this film opening doors for people.
Correct.
Mainly. And then when he does get into a fight, I mean, it's quite clever because you're expecting him to like do all his moves, and he basically just gets hit by a massive punch from this ex-boxer guy. And that was quite neat if you'd seen him fighting before. But even there's a training scene.
Yeah.
Like James Liu is another like martial arts actor and stuntman, has this fight sequence with Delamere, and Al Long stands in the back of the room as his chauffeur and watches.
Like,
and you're like,
he was going to take over and he was going to beat both of them. I was like, he's going to say, show him how it's done or something. And he doesn't. Again, he just stands there.
I just wonder if Joel Silver said, Al, can you be in the next film? And he said, I'm knackered. I've done a load of fighting. No. He said, I'll tell you what. You just got one fight scene. You just stand. And he's like, okay, go on then. Because it was just... And it's not like... It was like, if this had been 10 years earlier, maybe like Al Long's first role, but it's not. He was already in other films in bigger parts.
If you read Born to Be Bad, because I know you got this recently, the book, there's a chapter on Al Long, and he talks about his work and what he was doing.
Is this film in it? Is this in it?
I'm not sure, but I know that at one point he was doing like 3 films at once, and he had to kind of do a couple of days on one. He managed to persuade the directors that they could, and then he'd go and film the other one for a few days, and then he came back and filmed the other film. So it was one of these things where, for a period, he was the guy, and he was on call, and he's in everything. Like, Big Trouble in Little China, he got to do loads of stuff in there because there's so many excellent martial artists and that. And this, he's pretty much wasted. But the good news is, he did have a great role in Die Hard, where he ad-libbed, and that is one of the funniest moments in the film. And he has a proper speaking role in Lethal Weapon, and he has a couple of fight scenes in that with Mel Gibson. So he was the go-to guy. He's like Sven Ollie Thornton for Arnie films. Whenever there's a good action film in the late 80s, he was there somewhere.
Was he in Last Action Hero as well? I think
probably, but he was in one of the Bruce Lee's Sons films, the last one that he did, and a couple of the other films that he's done. He's so many things.
There was another person actually. I reckon. Did you used to watch the TV show Renegades?
No, what's that?
So that was Lorenzo Lamas.
Right.
Who was like, he was in Dallas for a while.
Okay.
Or something like that.
Right.
And then he was suddenly in lots of kind of low budget action movies. So then that was a TV. He ran for like 150 episodes. Him and this guy called Branscombe Richards. He's got a small part in this. In the weird scene about someone's balls being put in a jar.
Yeah, that was very, very. I don't really understand why they went there. Still, having watched it, I don't really know why they went there at all. Also, was one of the guys in the pool fight from Commando? You know the guy who kills on the plane? When they get on the plane, he snaps his neck and then.
I think it was. Yeah, I think it was.
I'm trying to remember the actor's name, but I can't remember. I'm going to have to look it up. But
I think you're right.
I think that's him. It might be Richard Duran. No, it's not Richard Duran. But he's been in tons of things. Wow, he was in Tango and Cash and Demolition Man. Anyway, I'm trying to remember his name. But
again, which are also Joel Silver films. As I'm saying, it's almost like he's got his own kind of a producer with his own ensemble that he just can lean on. It's
Charles Mishak. There you go. He passed away in 2006. A very, very large African-American man who's been in lots of films. There you go. Action Jackson, Commando, Child's Play 2, all sorts of stuff. There you go. Yeah, see? It's a lot of fun playing bingo with this film.
It must be very strange for you to see it for the first time.
Yeah, so you said, people are saying it's one of the hidden gems of this era that, a lot of people haven't seen. Having now watched this film and looked at all of the other films around it, connected to it by the actors, I can see why I missed it. No one told me to, but I think it was fortunate that I missed it back in the day. Because if I'd watched this and then you said, "Oh, do you want to watch another film with Carl Weathers?" I'd be like, "Nah, you're all right. I'm all right, thanks. I'll miss it."
Yeah.
If I hadn't seen him in Rocky and things like that before, I would have probably skipped it.
Yeah, which is I think I went into this with a lot of goodwill, and I was like, I think. Had I seen Beverly Hills Cop come out at that point? I'm trying to remember. So I think I was just, I was expecting this to be a brilliant film. And I was one of those films I was like, well, I saw the standee in the video shop. I rented it.
Yep.
I'm going to go into school on Monday, and my friends aren't going to believe I've seen this film. And then I watched it, and I thought, I might just keep quiet. Again, I thought it's not for me. I didn't understand it. I need to wait till I'm older. I'll see it again, and obviously I'm seeing it again now. So it's and it's I could forgive it a bit more if more of the jokes landed. So the fainting bit, some of the kind of repeat things worked really well. It was kind of funny but very corny when he said, "I have to catch a cab," and then he physically ran after a cab.
Yes. Yeah.
And then that felt, it's going to be like blaxploitation kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But then the other stuff people say, just like, I don't know who finds this. This again, a lot of it is quite misogynistic kind of humor between the guys, but not the kind of Shane Black guys on a helicopter stuff.
No,
but with not as sophisticated.
So there's also an actor in there called Albert Hughes, who's sometimes listed as Prince Hughes.
Is he the guy with no neck?
Yes, he's a very, very large man who played Sharon Stone's, I guess, not butler, but sort of, he looks after her.
Her valet?
Probably, yeah, because there's another one that looks after her husband who's got a very weird name. Do you remember?
Yeah.
I'll think of it in a minute. But he looks after her, and at some point, Action Jackson comes to try and talk to Vanity, and he's there in the corridor, sort of saying, you can't go in. And Jackson tries to punch his way past him. Remember this?
Yeah.
So he punches him in the face, and nothing happens. And then he punches him in the stomach, and he goes, Oh, I bet if I just punch you again, you'll push me through that wall. And he goes, yes. And I just thought, oh, he'll be smart and he'll just walk away. But he doesn't. He like rugby tackles him and knocks him through the door. That was quite amusing, but it wasn't. It just. And then he turns out to help Jackson later on.
Yeah. That's which I think. Again, I know like Die Hard probably hadn't been made yet, but it had that feeling at the end in Die Hard. It kind of some of the people he met, become his kind of allies.
Yeah.
But this did feel a little bit, and again, it did feel a little bit kind of, two of the other black guys have turned up to help him. It did feel a little bit forced. I don't know. It's some strange decisions. This reminds me a lot when I did. We've talked about this before. I think I did GSN drama.
Right.
And if ever you were put in a group that were all boys, and you had to do improv stuff or come with an idea, it always involved running around, asking each other questions, and then punching each other. Whatever you were given as an assignment, it would always involve running around and punching each other. And this reminded me of some of the things that we used to make up.
Ouch. Okay.
Because it did almost feel like they just, again, I don't know, they just turned up on set and were just like, go for it. Well, I think Craig T. Nelson and to a lesser extent Carl Weathers maybe were making a specific film.
Yeah.
Other people were just kind of doing whatever they fancied. It felt like.
Bill Duke had nothing much to do at all. I mean, he's such a great actor. I've seen so many things he's in. He's a great director too, more recently. Yeah. He had nothing to do. Robert Davi did the best that he could. But
they're nearly all extended cameos.
But really? Yeah, but like, he was playing a very different kind of a role. I mean, we've seen him do some great things. And so in this, he's playing a drug addict, and he's twitchy, and he's weird, and he's paranoid. And those scenes, I actually believed him. Because it's the same year, or 6 months later, he's working in Die Hard. And he's not nodding and winking to camera, but he's playing such an obnoxious arsehole.
Is he in a Bond film as well?
Yes, he is as well. And it's that thing where he's going, just like back in Vietnam, slick. And you know that he's having fun with it. You can see it. And he's just having so much fun. And then in this, you're like, yeah, he's doing the best that he can. But it really wasn't very good at all. At all.
I mean, one thing I'm going to try and lean into some positives in case this is anyone's favourite film and they're never going to listen to us ever again. Carl Weathers once replied to me on Twitter. Actually, twice has replied to me on Twitter, so I don't want to upset him either.
No.
I like the kind of almost James Bondness of him going straight to the villain and saying, "Like, I know what you've done, and I'm gonna prove it." Mm-hmm. It doesn't then really track that well because he kind of gets framed for stuff. But I did like that, and at the end he does get turned up in a tuxedo. There's a Bond kind of thing going on, and what I also liked is that it is a film with a. For the time in particular, a slightly more diverse cast.
True.
And it's never really mentioned, which I liked. It, and the only time it is mentioned is something that's said by Delamere, the main villain. Well, I thought that was quite powerful because if they're talking about it all the time, or if they don't talk about it at all, I don't really believe either of those things. No. But the fact that it's a community where no one's really saying anything about colour, but then when they're basically they've already kind of framed him, but they got one of the whatever they are, invisible death squad, invincible, mysterious, supernatural people. It's a black guy with a red shirt, and they kind of basically going to pretend that he is Jericho Jackson, and he says, well, it's how are you going to do that? And he basically says to most of the guests, you're all the same anyway.
Yeah.
About the party guests, and that is like you were like, ooh, and then you go. I really don't like. I mean, I really didn't. He's one of the most believable villains because I absolutely hated him in every scene he was in a good way. Yeah. It's like, why are you injecting her in the leg? Why are you being all weird with your wife you just killed? Why, in fact, did you kill your wife at all? I just still don't understand that. It's like but he's. I won't. Yeah, there is a famous figure that he reminds me of, but I won't go there.
Yes. Yeah,
but maybe we're both thinking the same. I think he's a bit of a. It could even be an analog for that person, but you never know.
You never know. Yes, but Craig T. Nelson has gone on, who played Delaplane, has gone on to do loads of stuff. He's still acting to this day in all sorts of TV shows and and films. And I've seen him in things over the years. You kind of look through his IMDb and go, oh yeah, he's in this and he's in that. But he was very, very nasty in this. A real piece of work. There's no redeeming features to this character at all.
No, even though they allude to them, because like often in these things, maybe there's a relationship with their wife, or they've got a son, or there's something. Yeah. Even if you hate them, there's some little bit you go, oh, there's some humanity there. This guy's just an absolute shit, really. And you kind of, and then the only time you ever think any differently of him, and it's for about 5 seconds before you've really met him, is when, say, his wife Patrice, Sharon Stone's character, says, "Oh, he's not as bad as you think he is." And I watched this, I thought, well, if he's not as bad as I think he is, well, that still doesn't make him very good.
Well, it just shows how ignorant her character was. The fact that she had to eavesdrop on one of his people to find out what was going on, to realise that her husband was a villain. She didn't even know that her husband had a mistress. Everyone else seemed to know, or that, you know, his car business was just part of his criminal empire. And she was very much, as you say, a trophy wife, but he'd already cast her aside and ignored her. Because there's that awful scene where she's found out something. Yeah. And her instinct is to go to her husband, who she believes is a good man, and tell him this awful thing that one of his people are doing. And
which
he
is
just kind of brushes her off.
Which is kind of what gets her killed, I think.
Yeah.
The combination of that and her going for lunch and talking
to Jackson instead, because her husband ignored her, and when she was trying to tell him what she'd learned, which he already knew because he'd given the orders to kill various people and do all this Death Squad stuff, and it's like, oh dear. Oh no, love. But yes, she didn't have a lot to do, but her character was quite kind of...
And it is that thing, it's like woman in peril, oh, she's been killed. Oh, another woman in peril instead. It was a really... That was the thing that stuck with me as a kid. It was just like... I don't know. They're almost... Even though they're different characters, they're almost interchangeable. You could have written it in a way that it's the same person. Easily, I think. And maybe, you know, who knows? Maybe one of them was cast later than the other, or they did, you know, things... They did test screen or what, I don't know. I don't know the background of the film, but it's just it's all a little bit odd.
Yes, that's true. It is very, very odd indeed. The fight scenes were good. Carl Weathers is really good in them when he does have a few fight scenes. He has a couple of scraps, guys in the pool room where he takes them apart.
And a bit like Lethal Weapon, this was the days when if you wanted if you found the person you were looking for that was the cop, you had to tie them up after taking their shirt off. Now, admittedly, in Lethal Weapon, he gets electrocuted. You know. But here, it was just... I don't know what the reason was, really. Just
he needed chained up.
Didn't they need his shirt to give to the guy to pretend to be him?
Yes. But I'm sure he could have bought another red shirt. Yeah. But anyway, that's besides the point.
It's like male cheesecake.
It's true. Bit of beefcake.
That's the word, beefcake, sorry. Cheesecake obviously is a derivative of beefcake rather than the other way around. Thank you. I've never actually realised that before, but thank you.
Yes, I like the cheesecake. Male beefcake. He had some good fight scenes. The action when it happened, there wasn't enough of it because for the name that he's given. At one point, Vanity's character, Sydney, even says, action, you must be joking. And I thought, she's got a point, because from what she's seen of him, he's pretty dull. He didn't want to go out partying. He didn't want to do this. He didn't want to do that. She said, you're either queer or a cop. And then he goes, I'm not queer. And it's like, ooh, right, okay.
But the whole thing, again, this was very 80s of like, you thought there was almost going to be something between him and Sharon Stone's character.
Almost,
and then you go, actually, she's like, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Why don't you want to be with me? And then it goes through, and at the end, it's one of the corniest things I've ever seen, is where she looks at him, he looks at her, and she goes, and he says something about, you know, it'll never work between me and a heroin addict, junkie, and she goes, ex-junkie, and he goes, what? And she goes, I'm going to go cold turkey, and he's almost like, okay, now I will have sex with you, and it's like, you know, she's not got, you know, I appreciate there was money changing hands, but she's not got the, you know, she's with the guy, the bad guy, remember, like 5 minutes ago. There are other women that in your story universe, yes, only 3 women exist, 2 are dead, but in the real world, if you were to step to the right of this film or the left of this film, other women do exist, Mr. Jackson. Things are, they've almost overloaded him with cool names because he's Jericho. Jericho Jackson itself is cool enough.
Yes.
With or without the action, I think.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
I'm assuming Rampage Jackson is his son.
Ouch. Ouch.
Or inspired by the name, you never know. You never know.
But so if you go back to the right, so a lot of the problems in this film is down to the script. And if you look at the writer, Robert Renault, as you mentioned, he worked on Demolition Man, on the screenplay and the story. And I was trying to look at parallels between this. And obviously there's huge differences in terms of Action Jackson's modern day for that time period, and Demolition Man is futuristic, so it's got a sci-fi bent. But I feel that there's more humour in Demolition Man, and it doesn't always work, but it lands better than it does in this. And it's not the cast. We said the cast is brilliant. There's so many great names from this period. I mean, and Demolition Man was only like 5 years later.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the difference was. Were there other people that worked on Demolition Man as well? Oh, according to this, there were about 5 writers on Demolition Man.
Okay.
According to IMDb page. So it suggests that maybe he may have done an earlier draft, and they kept his name on, and others came in and punched it up, as we would say, and improved the characters and plot. But his last screenwriting credit was Demolition Man.
Okay.
But I keep trying to find positive things to say about this film. I really did. The fact that I stopped watching it halfway through and went off and did something else and finished watching the rest of the film later that day shows that I wasn't really gripped by it. And I'd hoped that this was a hidden gem from that golden period of action films that we always talk about, with lots of my favourite actors that somehow I missed.
You see, there's a thing here. I'm just looking at IMDb to try and find something. So yes, it does list actually the Dennis Hayden, Devereaux White, Robert Davey, Mary Ellen Trainor, Al Long, and producer Joel Silver were also all appeared in Die Hard.
Yes.
And right, it does say it's one of the last blaxploitation movies following Hollywood Shuffle in 1987 and I'm Gonna Get You Sucker in 1988, which it says pretty much killed the genre. But both of those I remember being good. Or certainly better.
Yeah.
In the 90s, Vanity cast off her stage name and became an evangelical Christian.
Okay. Well, she passed away in, 2016, I think.
She did. And also, another film, actually, with a link. 2 films with a link. So, Mary Ellen Trainor was also in Goonies with Robert Davey.
And Die Hard and All the Lethal Weapons.
And she's in Back to the Future 2 with Thomas F. Wilson, which you mentioned before.
Yeah. Yeah. See, there's so many great actors. Yeah. So many great actors in this thing that you're just like, I don't know. You maybe that's part of the thing. We've said this before. When you've got a great cast of characters, like someone said, "Oh, do you want to be in a film with Bruce Willis and Sigourney Weaver?" You'd be like, "Yeah, brilliant," and you're the lead actor. Brilliant, I'm in. And then you get it, and you go, "Oh, wow." Oh.
But I know what we can do for next month. There's a film from 1990 apparently called Dangerous Passion. Right. Which in some countries was retitled Action Jackson 2 to try and cash in on this movie. Actually, in fairness, it looks quite interesting. It's him and Billy D. Williams.
Carl Weathers and Billy D. Williams?
Yeah, as the 2 main characters.
Interesting.
Although his character is called Kyle Weston, so if you're watching Action Jackson 2 and his character is completely different.
He's undercover, he's changed his name. That's what it is, he's undercover.
Very, very, very undercover.
Yeah.
I've forgotten that trend of giving a film the name of another film in order to make it more popular. Or less popular, I guess.
All right, let's get to some scores, shall we?
Okay.
Enough with the yak. What is your score?
Shall I go first?
Yeah, go on then.
It's going to be brutal. I'm just telling you right now up front.
Okay.
So, this was a missing film from my viewing back catalogue from this era. I've seen a lot of films with these actors in. A big fan of action films from this era. Some of our favourite films still are from this period. Like we've talked about them, the Die Hards, the Predators, the Running Mans, and Demolition Man and things like that. There's some great films. This didn't work. There was lots of elements that could have been great, lots of great actors, a lot of potential, but the dialogue was poor. The script just wasn't there. It just wasn't there. I mean, the directing, I'm not an expert on directors, so I can't say it was really good because of this or that. I just didn't see anything in particular. But it was a poor mishmash of lots of different things that I struggled with, and it really, really couldn't focus on it for long. So I've gone back and forth, and just from talking through with it tonight, I'm actually going to give it 1 out of 5.
Ooh, when did you like? Have you done that low on a full episode before?
I don't know. I thought about 2, and I thought, no, there's other films that are a little bit better than this. I'd give a 2 for. So I'm going to have to, despite all of my love for the actors, it's 1 bag out of 5.
I think this is the probably most unhappy you've been since surviving the game.
Yep.
Yeah.
Go on, what's your score, Pete?
Well, I said I've seen it before, so it's a little bit different from me. But I would agree. What it felt like is they had all the ingredients to make a really good film, but no recipe whatsoever. So because they weren't sure, they just kept throwing more things in and hoping it would improve. But it feels much longer than an hour and a half, this film, I think, but that's not a good sign.
That's not good.
Isn't a good sign. Tonally, like I said before, it's all over the shop. It's not like an action comedy. It's not a comedy with... It's not an action film, with comedy moments even. It's just almost like a brutal 80s revenge movie with some comedy dressing. And as I say, this kind of like almost comedy fights, which kind of underpin it. I mean, Craig T. Nelson is very good in it, as we've said.
Yep. And
Carl Weathers, he does what he can. I was just reading a bit then that apparently the shooting schedule was really tough, and he said he was 39 when he made this film, and he said he felt 60 by the end of it and was riddled with injuries because the director was pushing him to do more and more fights and shoot much quicker.
Right.
But I don't think I'm going to give it 1 because I think Carl Weathers in anything is worth an extra bag because he's very good and he should be better. And, I'll cut the director some slack because he wanted to make Stone Cold, which is one of my favourite hidden gem movies that we covered back early on. Another film you hadn't seen at the time.
Nope.
You used to watch films that were in the cinema and everything when you were young.
True, yeah.
So this is going to scrape 2 bags. But one of those bags is for Carl Weathers and just goodwill.
See, you're a generous and kind man, Pete.
See.
I've always said that.
They've caught me in a good mood.
Yeah.
You know.
They caught me in an honest mood.
Well, that's a valid point. But so there we are.
So, have you seen the hidden gem that is Action Jackson from 1988?
If you haven't, you really should. You should see what it's like, just to believe that we're not kind of making it up, because it is almost like did you get to the end and almost go, have I missed a bit? Is it really the film?
Yeah.
It almost feels like
is there a credit sequence? What? No.
I've got enough friends that are editors. If someone just gave me the raw materials, I think you could edit a better film out of it. But there's also a 2014 Indian action movie where they licensed the name, but it was nothing. The plot was completely different. So there's another Action Jackson, which has got a similar score on IMDb.
Wow, maybe that's not one to check out then. Okay, so have you seen Action Jackson? If so, get in touch with us and let us know. Contact us on email, come onto the Facebook group. Don't forget to subscribe and join our YouTube channel. We have new weekly episodes being posted every week, 5-minute reviews on there. You can leave us a review on iTunes, of course, as well. Okay, I think we've talked about this film.
I think we have. So thank you for listening, if indeed you still are.
Good night.
Good night.
You have been listening to Bags of Action. No bullshit. You'd better stick around for the next episode, because if you're lying, I'll be back.